Translator, Henyi Translations. Editor, Henyi Translations. In the depths of the ghostly dragon cave, where ancient dragon blood had long since congealed into rivers that never ran dry, 3 figures stood upon a bank slick with crimson mist. Ling Han, Helian Shun Shui, and Xian Yu Kai, while the air itself seemed to carry a faint metallic bite, as though the world here had been steeped in a dragon's last breath. Then, from the blood river, something surged. Helian Shun Shui's expression changed first, her pupils tightening. Xian Yu Kai sucked in a sharp breath, the pride on her face cracking for a heartbeat. The 2 of them blurted out almost at the same time, voices struck by the same alarm. "It's a bloodworm!" Neither of these sea race rulers had ever truly stepped into Dragon Cave before today, yet they had pored over records, maps, and every scrap of gathered intelligence again and again, because each of them had at least one chance to enter this place. They had forced themselves to understand the rules of this deathly realm, and the bloodworm was one of those rules. This creature was no ordinary beast. It was a peculiar life form that only came into existence because of an alternative dragon, a dragon-kin presence so strange that even in death it left behind blood that could birth monsters. After the alternative dragon died, its blood became a river. Within that river, the bloodworm was born. It was granted life by the alternative dragon, yet it was also shackled by it. For its entire lifetime, it could not truly leave the body of the alternative dragon. Its existence, its range, its limits, everything was bound to that dead dragon's remains. It could rage and feed and grow fierce, but only within that corpse-born domain. And still, despite being trapped like that, its power was terrifying, because it was born from the blood river itself. No matter what, it had absorbed a trace of the alternative dragon's blood. Even a single sliver of such blood, diluted across ages, could turn a creature into a nightmare. The bloodworm rose and revealed a circular maw lined with sharp fangs, a mouth like a living ring blade. It snapped forward, aiming straight for Ling Han. But Ling Han didn't retreat. He threw his head back and laughed, the sound cutting through the oppressive stillness like a sword drawn from its sheath. His voice carried both mockery and the calm confidence of someone who had already measured his enemy. "In the stream, I let you have a little room to act. Now we're out of the water, so you still want to play the tyrant?" His sword flashed. There was no long exchange, no drawn-out struggle, only a single, clean strike. In an instant, blood sprayed in all directions, splattering the air like rain thrown from a crimson banner. The bloodworm was split from head to tail, cleaved in 2, as if heaven itself had issued a verdict. The creature's insides spilled onto the surface of the river, and a foul, overpowering stench rose at once, so strong it seemed to taint the breath of anyone nearby. So powerful, so clean, so decisive. Xian Yu Chai could only stare, her mouth parting despite herself. She had heard of the bloodworm's dreadful reputation for a long time, the sort of reputation that made even sea race elites wary. Yet Ling Han had killed it with a single slash. In that moment, a question stabbed at her pride from 2 directions at once. Was Ling Han truly that strong? Or had the rumors been wrong? And the bloodworm wasn't actually as fearsome as the stories claimed. Ling Han turned without ceremony, stepped back and dropped onto the bank as if finishing a trivial chore. Helian Shun Shui immediately walked up, her voice steady but her gaze quick, scanning him as though checking for hidden wounds. "Are you all right?" Ling Han shook his head, relaxed, as if the danger had never touched him. "I'm fine," he said. "There's power of regulation in this blood river. The corrosion strength changes depending on each person's cultivation level. And you know, my physique is an entire tier higher than my cultivation." Helian Shunshui's eyes widened slightly as the logic snapped into place. No wonder. No wonder the corrosion rate had seemed almost similar among those who had fallen into the river earlier. Most of them carried the true dragon bloodline, and their physiques had been tempered until they were as tough as precious metal at their level. If their bodies were all forged to roughly the same standard, then the blood river's corrosive regulation would naturally gnaw at them at roughly the same pace. But Ling Han was different. His physique stood above his cultivation level by a whole tier. So even though the blood still corroded him, the rate was far slower than what the sea race rulers endured. Compared to them, he was the real ruler in this river. From a short distance away, Xian Yukai's voice cut in, sharp with irritation. "Hey, where's the dragon's bloodgrass?" She didn't like the way Ling Han carried himself, especially not that faint pride that seemed to sit on his shoulders like an invisible cloak. Every time she looked at him, she felt an urge to strike, as if her temper were a blade itching to be drawn. Yes, he had killed the bloodworm. Fine. Impressive. But hadn't he claimed earlier that he had discovered dragon's bloodgrass? So where was it? Helian Shun's gaze turned cold at once, her ruler's aura pressing down as she shot Xian Yuchai a warning look. What business is it of yours? And before the sting of that glare could even fade, Hu Niu's fierceness piled on top. So savage it was almost comical in its intensity. Her expression practically screamed a threat. "Why don't we just cook you into dragon stew?" Ling Han didn't bother to respond to the spoiled little princess's provocation. He simply lifted his right hand, gave Helian Shunshui the briefest reveal of what he held, and then put it away again, as casually as slipping a secret into his sleeve. In that single flash, Helian Shunshui saw it clearly. Dragon's bloodgrass. Her beautiful eyes lit up like lanterns in a storm. So it really was true. Dragon's bloodgrass grew along the riverbed. And from what they had just confirmed with their own eyes, only Ling Han could endure the blood river well enough to retrieve it. Which meant what? It meant countless stalks of dragon's bloodgrass were practically beckoning to them from below. Even setting aside the fact that there would be enough to let Ling Han's son build his foundations, there might be enough even for Ling Han himself to use. Helian Shunshui understood immediately. In matters like this, the best gains were the ones taken quietly. There was no reason to let Xian Yukai know. But from Xian Yukai's perspective, the scene looked entirely different. Ling Han didn't produce the dragon's bloodgrass in front of her. He didn't display it. He didn't prove it to satisfy her suspicion. So her disdain hardened, turning into certainty. In her mind, this only confirmed that Ling Han was a con man, putting on a performance with slick timing. And Helian Shunshui? To Xian Yuchai, Helian Shunshui was simply too foolish, fooled so thoroughly that she didn't even doubt him. Meanwhile, Ling Han's attention had already shifted elsewhere. In his mind, he communicated with Small Tower, asking a crucial question. Could dragon's bloodgrass be grown inside the Black Tower? When Small Tower gave an affirmative answer, Ling Han's mood lifted instantly, his delight rising like inner energy surging through a meridian. But that delight didn't last long, because the Black Tower could only accelerate the dragon's bloodgrass's growth. It could not produce seeds from it. And the reason was maddeningly simple. This plant didn't even have seeds. Dragon's bloodgrass was not a normal spirit herb that scattered its future into the wind. It was something entirely birthed from the alternative dragon. It could only be nurtured here, in this blood-soaked domain. Ling Han's gaze sharpened with a cultivator's stubborn practicality. Fine. No seeds? Then no seeds. If he couldn't multiply it by planting, he would multiply its value by improving its quality. 3 leaves becoming 4, or even 5 or 6. If that could happen, then the effects would rise, and that would be equivalent to having several more stalks anyway. So the hunt continued. As they advanced, Ling Han repeatedly activated the Eye of Truth, searching the riverbed for dragon's bloodgrass. This spirit herb was nurtured by the blood of an alternative dragon, and it truly embodied the saying, growing unsullied out of the mud. It stripped away the danger of the corrosive blood and retained only what a cultivator craved, the power to refine the physique and strengthen one's body. But the cave never gave gifts without charging a price. Wherever dragon's bloodgrass grew, bloodworms guarded it. So conflict was unavoidable. The bloodworms they encountered were all at the heaven tier. Some were even terrifying enough to possess the battle prowess of 10 stars of the heaven tier. Against those, even Ling Han couldn't afford arrogance. He had to push his abilities to their utmost limit just to kill them. Still, step by step, kill by kill, harvest by harvest, their gains piled up. By the end of 3 days, they had gathered more than 100 stalks of dragon's bloodgrass. Helian Shunshui was nearly vibrating with excitement. One had to understand what this meant. Even if an entire clan had worked year after year in the past, the total they gathered might not have reached this number. And the reason was as blunt as the blood river itself. Only Ling Han could go into the river. Xian Yu Kai, on the other hand, had become almost numb with disbelief. This human in her eyes kept acting again and again, always looking like he was doing something secretive, always returning as if he had gained nothing. Yet Helian Xunshui still trusted him after so many times. To Xian Yu Kai, it was practically inconceivable. Where was the aloof pride of a sea race ruler? Where was the nobility? She felt as if Helian Xunshui had thrown all of that dignity straight to the far horizon. On the fourth day, the landscape itself shifted into something even more immense. The first level of the ghostly dragon cave was vast beyond expectation. Multiple blood rivers from different origins converged here, gathering into a supergiant lake, a crimson inland sea so wide it felt like standing before an ocean that had forgotten the color blue, and in the center of this lake, a small island. Upon that island stood a white, tower-like structure. According to hearsay, it was a passageway, an entrance that could lead down into the second level. But the path wasn't simply there. To advance, they had to cross the lake. If they couldn't reach that island, they couldn't reach the tower. And if they couldn't reach the tower, the second floor might as well not exist. They weren't the first to face this problem. Already some groups were crossing the lake. After countless years of exploration and sacrifice, the three great royal clans had developed methods. They had discovered that vessels made from the bones of sea race rulers could withstand the corrosion of the blood water for a long time. These bones came from elites of the sea race who had already died. Their skulls were buried in ancestral shrines, treated with reverence, but their other bones were left behind. Those bones served two purposes. One, they could be made into rafts to cross this lake. Two, the bones of experts at the Shattering Void tier could even be forged into spirit tools, tools of tremendous might. Previously, everyone had been scattered, randomly sent to various ends of branching blood veins. But now, at this vast lake, they gathered again. Ling Han's eyes swept across the scene, and he spotted Xu Xuran and the others. They sat upon a bone raft, moving toward the island. As they travelled, the raft itself was being eaten away little by little, corroded by the blood water. Judging by its condition, it would likely survive just long enough for them to reach the island, and then collapse into pieces. Helian Xunshui didn't hesitate. She pulled out a bone raft from her spatial spirit tool. Since she had dared to enter this place, she had naturally come prepared. Her raft was small, sized as if it could only carry 5 people at most. But if only 3 climbed aboard, it would feel quite spacious. Xian Yu Chai let out an annoyed humph and produced her own bone raft as well. With her higher status, of course, she possessed one. She didn't need to share with others like those beneath her, and she steered close behind Ling Han's group, following like a shadow. She was waiting with bated breath to see Ling Han finally fail, waiting for the moment when his tricks would collapse and the truth would embarrass him in front of everyone. Ling Han took up the oars and propelled the raft forward. But even while moving, his gaze kept drifting downward, piercing the lake's depths as if his eyes could carve open the red waters. Then, suddenly, he drew in a sharp breath and exclaimed, his voice carrying the thrill of sudden fortune, "We've struck the jackpot!" Helian Xunshui's face brightened instantly, delight flashing across her features. "Another dragon's blood grass?" Ling Han's smile widened. "Not just dragon's blood grass," he said. "It's a 4-leaf one." At that, even Helian Xunshui's calm composure faltered. 1 extra leaf might sound small, but the difference in effects between 3 leaves and 4 was like the difference between ordinary steel and divine metal. Ling Han didn't dive at once. He continued staring downward, measuring the risk with a hunter's patience. "However," he said, tone tightening, "this stalk has a big one guarding it." Near the dragon's blood grass, coiled like a living siege weapon, was a bloodworm so massive it was shocking, about 30 meters long. Even through the lake water, Ling Han could sense its terrifying presence. That pressure. It had to be Shattering Void tier. Only a creature at that level could radiate such intimidation without even moving. Helian Xunshui's voice softened, not with weakness, but with the clear priority of someone who understood what could not be replaced. "If it's too dangerous, don't take the risk," she advised. "Spirit herbs are valuable, but life is more important." Ling Han nodded, accepting the caution without arguing. Then his eyes sharpened, and his voice carried a decisive edge. "Then I'll set an array to kill it." Tong! He leapt into the water. As he plunged down, the ice dragon earth-blasting array formed and followed him, its presence like a cold, disciplined formation accompanying a general into battle. Yet the moment he entered these deeper lake waters, Ling Han realized something at once. The corrosion here was far stronger than before, much stronger. Even with a physique a whole tier higher than his cultivation, pressure wrapped around him from every direction. The lake felt like it was trying to grind him down with invisible teeth. And then he felt it clearly. His skin had already begun to corrode. The crimson-stained waters of the lake hissed and bubbled as Ling Han's aura flared, a gleaming shimmer emanating from the indestructible heaven scroll circling his body. The ancient power of the scroll spread outward, forming a protective barrier that slowed the corrosive wrath of the lake. Though the bloodied water still gnawed at his flesh, the rate of decay was reduced tenfold, a miraculous reprieve given the lake's potency. Ling Han's mind raced. The lake's waters bore the regulatory imprint of a legendary dragon who had once reached 20 stars of Shattering Void Tier. Even the most daring cultivators of the Shattering Void Tier would tremble at lingering within these waters for long. The bone raft, cobbled together from the remains of a Shattering Void Tier cultivator, groaned beneath him. Though corrosion still nibbled at its structure, it held, carrying passengers across the deadly expanse, a feat impossible without flight, save for a creature as extraordinary as Ling Han himself. Swift as a gale, he propelled himself through the blood-slicked currents, eyes locked on the coveted stalk of dragon's bloodgrass that shimmered in the distance. A monstrous ripple surged beneath the lake. The ancient bloodworm stirred, awakening with a roar that echoed like thunder through the cavernous air. Its gaping maw revealed jagged fangs, a visage of pure ferocity. Ling Han chuckled, undaunted. "Such bravado! Do you think I fear you?" He raised a hand, and in response, the ice dragon materialized, its scales glittering with frost, claws gleaming with celestial majesty. The bloodworm, crowned with golden rings upon its scarlet body, radiated a regal aura, the Worm King, a creature on the brink of ascending from worm to dragon. Yet before it stood a true dragon, born of Ling Han's array technique. The clash was monumental. Claws and fangs met in a maelstrom of ice and blood, the lake trembling beneath their battle. The Worm King's prowess, surely 7 stars or more, allowed it to contest the ice dragon with terrifying skill, occasionally seeming to gain the upper hand. Its might earned its title without question, yet in intelligence it faltered. Unaware that the ice dragon was but an extension of Ling Han's array, it hurled itself repeatedly at an invincible foe, each strike as futile as the last. Ling Han, far from naive, wasted no time awaiting the battle's conclusion. He surged forward, slicing through the water like a streak of light, and grasped the 4-leafed dragon's bloodgrass. Its life essence pulsed briefly before he stored it safely within the black tower, a quiet victory amidst the chaos. Then he turned, fleeing, leaving the Worm King's fury to rage behind him. The ice dragon, tethered to Ling Han's array, intercepted the Worm King's furious lunges. Each strike it delivered was a calculated delay, a buffer for Ling Han's retreat. The Worm King, blinded by rage and brute force, lunged time and again, unaware it served only as a shielded obstacle. Ling Han breached the lake's surface, eyes scanning ahead. Helian Xunshui had guided the bone raft to a small island. He raced toward it, emerging from the deadly waters unscathed. The Worm King erupted in a towering spray, hurling the corrosive blood over all who dared linger. The screams were sharp and painful, yet none dared oppose its wrath directly. Every living being moved with desperate haste, rowing and scrambling to avoid the beast's fury, cursing Ling Han for his audacity. With a confident grin, Ling Han climbed aboard the raft. "Success! Retreat!" he declared. Helian Xunshui inclined her head in agreement. The tower loomed ahead, a spire of bones with a hollow tunnel spiraling to the second floor. Without hesitation, Ling Han, Helian Xunshui, and who knew leapt into the passage, leaving the Worm King seething below. The lake roared in anger, waves lashing as the monstrous creature twisted, yet the party pressed on, their path illuminated by courage and the unknown perils ahead. Xian Yu Kai followed, startled by Ling Han's recklessness, daring to provoke a Worm King without regard for danger. Yet even she could not deny his skill. Few could maneuver such a beast with impunity. Within the passage, Ling Han gathered his companions into the protective confines of the Black Tower. Each step was cautious, the air thick with anticipation. As he had foreseen, Shu Shu Ran's group lay in wait on the second level of the ghostly dragon cave. The ambush was set. The young geniuses of the 5 great immortal sects intended to eliminate the anomaly that was Ling Han before he could alter the delicate balance of their long-laid plans. Ling Han's lips curled into a knowing smile. "They've set their trap," he mused. Helian Sun Shui's eyes gleamed with lethal intent. "Then we shall strike first," she declared. Hu Nu's excitement was palpable. She thrived on the thrill of battle. Ling Han's strategy was precise. Though outnumbered, the tables had turned. The hunters would become the hunted. 3 against 5, they would focus their power to eliminate a single foe and fracture the opposing ranks. Ling Han's gaze sharpened. "Kill Jiaming!" And in that instant, the deadly dance of strategy, power, and wrath began anew, the echoes of battle ready to roar through the tunnels of the ghostly dragon cave.